The medical bay of Station Veeler was always cold. Lieutenant Una Park had learned to accept this after 2 years of living among aliens, who preferred temperatures that made her breath visible. She wore 3 layers under her uniform and kept a small heating pad in her pocket. The aliens thought she was strange for needing warmth. She thought they were strange for having blue blood and 6 fingers. They had learned to accept each other. Yuna was the only human on this station. Earth had sent her as part of a diplomatic exchange program. She was supposed to learn about alien cultures and report back home. Mostly, she spent her days attending boring meetings and eating food that tasted like wet cardboard. The aliens were friendly enough, but they looked at her like she was a curiosity. A small, soft creature from a small, wet planet at the edge of the galaxy. Today felt different. Una noticed it the moment she walked into the central hall. The aliens were not talking. They stood in small groups, their faces frozen in expressions she had learned to read as fear. The Valori, tall beings with silver skin, clutched their hands together. The Thasians, small creatures with large eyes, huddled near the walls. Even the station guards, massive warriors from a planet she could not pronounce, looked nervous. Ambassador Rolta stood at the center of the room. He was the leader of this station, a Valori diplomat who had lived for 300 years. Una had never seen him afraid before. Today, his silver skin had turned pale gray. His hand shook as he held a data tablet. "Thank you all for coming," Rolta said. His voice was quiet. "I have received news from the Central Authority. It is not good." The room became even more silent. Una moved closer, standing near a group of Thasian scientists. One of them looked at her and tried to smile. "It did not work. The Crimson Blight has reached our sector," Rolta announced. The reaction was immediate. Several aliens cried out. Others collapsed to the floor. One Valori woman began to weep, a sound like breaking glass. Una did not understand. She had never heard of the Crimson Blight before. "What is that?" She whispered to the Thasian beside her. The small alien stared at her with wide, terrified eyes. "Death," he said simply. "It is death for all of us." Rolta continued speaking. His voice cracked several times. 17 worlds have already gone dark. The Valori Empire has lost contact with 4 colony planets. The Thasian Collective reports that their home world is infected. The Brel Confederation is burning their own ships to stop the spread. Una listened carefully. She was a soldier, trained to stay calm in emergencies. But she still did not understand why everyone was so afraid. Diseases could be treated. Doctors could find cures. This was basic knowledge on Earth. "This plague," Rolta said, "dissolves neural tissue within days. It attacks the brain and nervous system. Victims lose their memories first. Then they lose control of their bodies. Then they die. No species has ever survived it. The mortality rate is absolute. 100%. Everyone who catches it dies." The room filled with sounds of grief. Una watched as centuries-old alliances crumbled in moments. Species that had been enemies began to hold each other. What was the point of old fights when everyone was about to die? The station's medical officer pushed through the crowd. His name was Brel, a 4-armed creature with rough gray skin and eyes that could see in complete darkness. He was the best doctor on the station, trained at the finest medical academies in the galaxy. "I have images of the pathogen," Brel announced. He activated a holographic display, and a 3-dimensional image appeared in the air. Red spiraling organisms danced across the projection. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like fire or lightning. "This is the Crimson Blight," Brel explained. "It spreads through air, water, and physical contact. Incubation period is 3 to 5 days. Symptoms begin with fever and red marks on the skin. Death follows within 2 weeks. There is no cure, There is no vaccine. There is no hope. Una stared at the holographic image. Something about it looked familiar. She could not explain why. The spiral pattern, the protein structure, the way the organism moved. She had seen something like this before, long ago, in a memory she could not quite reach. "We must prepare for the end," Ralta said softly. "Contact your families. Make your peace. The Crimson Blight will reach this station within days. We cannot escape it." People began to leave the room. Some walked slowly, already accepting death. Others ran, desperate to send final messages home. Una stayed where she was, still staring at the holographic display. "Lieutenant Park," Brel said, noticing her. "You should go. Contact your people on Earth. Say goodbye." "Wait," Una said. She stepped closer to the display. "Can you zoom in on that protein shell? The outer layer of the organism?" Brel looked confused. No one had ever asked him such a question during an apocalypse announcement. But he was a scientist, and scientists answered questions. He adjusted the display, magnifying the image. The protein structure expanded across the hologram. Una could see every detail now. The spiral patterns, the attachment points, the way the organism locked onto cells and invaded them. She knew this. She absolutely knew this. "This is impossible," Ralta said, watching her. "Human, what are you doing? Why are you not afraid?" Una did not answer. She pulled out her personal datapad and began searching through old files. Her colleague back on Earth, a researcher named Taiho Kim, had once sent her a collection of historical medical documents. He thought it was funny, sending her homework while she was posted in outer space. She had kept the files, never expecting to need them. She found what she was looking for. A medical image from over 400 years ago. A disease that had killed millions of humans across centuries before they learned to defeat it. Una looked at the hologram, then at her datapad. The structures were almost identical. The same spiral pattern. The same protein shell. The same method of attack. "I know this," she said softly. The entire room turned to stare at her. Ambassador Ralta, who had been walking toward the door, stopped completely. Brel lowered his forearms, his eyes fixed on the small human woman. "What did you say?" Ralta asked. Una looked up at them. She was not afraid. She was not sad. She was confused, yes, but also strangely calm. Because she had faced this enemy before. Not personally, but her species had. Her ancestors had fought this battle and won. "I said I know this," Una repeated. "I have seen this before." "That is impossible," Brel insisted. "The Crimson Blight has never reached your sector of the galaxy. Your species has never encountered it." Una shook her head slowly. A small smile appeared on her face, though she tried to hide it. Smiling during an apocalypse seemed rude. "No," she said. "We have definitely encountered it. On Earth, we call it something different. We call it chickenpox. And I had it when I was 8 years old. In 3rd grade." The room fell completely silent. Every alien stared at the human woman as if she had just spoken in a language they could not understand. Which, in a way, she had. Because the words she spoke made no sense to them. Childhood illness. The plague that destroyed civilizations was a childhood illness on Earth. Ralta opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Brel ran another scan on his equipment, convinced something must be wrong. The Thashan scientists whispered to each other in rapid, frightened voices, and Una stood in the center of it all, holding her datapad, remembering the week she had spent covered in red spots while her mother made her soup and told her not to scratch. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. They were much harder to kill than anyone had imagined. Nobody spoke for a long time. The aliens stared at Yuna with expressions that mixed confusion, disbelief, and something that looked almost like anger. How dare this small human woman claim to know the plague that was killing their worlds? How dare she smile while civilizations burned? Ambassador Rolta was the first to find his voice. "Lieutenant Park," he said carefully, "I understand that humans process fear differently than other species. Perhaps you are in shock. Perhaps your mind is protecting itself from the truth. But I must ask you to be serious. The Crimson Blight is not a joke." "I am being serious," Yuna replied. She held up her datapad, showing the medical image from Earth's history. "Look at this. Look at the structure. The protein shell, the spiral pattern, the attachment points. They are nearly identical. This is a variant of a disease that has existed on Earth for thousands of years." Brel moved closer, his forearms reaching for different instruments at the same time. He was a doctor before anything else, and doctors investigated strange claims. He took the datapad from Yuna and examined the image carefully. "The similarity is remarkable," he admitted slowly. "But similarity does not mean identity. Many diseases share common structures." "Then run the comparison yourself," Yuna said. "Put my medical records next to the Crimson Blight data. Check my blood. I promise you will find something interesting." Before Brel could respond, the station shook violently. Alarms began to sound, loud and sharp. Red lights flashed across every wall. A mechanical voice announced in 6 different languages that an unauthorized ship had docked at the emergency port. "What is happening?" Rolta demanded. A guard rushed into the room, his massive body covered in battle armor. "Ambassador, a refugee ship has arrived from Thassa Prime. They forced their way through our defense network. They are already inside the station." Rolta's silver face went pale again. "Did they pass through decontamination?" "There was no time. They crashed through the dock doors. Several of them are wounded. Several of them are—" The guard stopped speaking. His eyes showed the answer. "Infected," Rolta finished quietly. "They brought the plague with them." Panic exploded through the room. Aliens ran in every direction, pushing and shoving to reach the evacuation pods. Some screamed names of loved ones. Others prayed to gods from 100 different worlds. The orderly station became chaos in seconds. Brel did not run. He was a doctor, and doctors stayed with patients. He sealed the medical bay doors, trapping himself inside with Yuna and the equipment she had asked him to use. The thick metal doors locked with a heavy sound that meant they would not open again without special codes. "What are you doing?" Yuna asked. "If the infected are aboard, the entire station is compromised," Brel explained calmly. "The evacuation pods will not save anyone. The plague spreads through air circulation systems. Everyone who breathes station air is already exposed. Running is pointless." Through the sealed doors, they could hear the sounds of terror. Screams, crashes, the rumble of evacuation pods launching into space. But Yuna knew those pods would carry infected passengers to other stations, other worlds. The plague would spread no matter what anyone did. "Then we work," Yuna said firmly. "Check my blood like I asked." "We do not have time to argue anymore." Brel nodded slowly. He guided Yuna to a medical chair and began preparing his instruments. His 4 hands moved with the speed and precision of someone who had practiced these motions. "Thousands of times. This will hurt slightly," he warned. "I have had worse," Yuna replied. The needle entered her arm. Dark red blood flowed into collection tubes. Brel attached the tubes to his analysis machine and began the scan. While they waited, they could hear the sealed doors shaking. Someone was trying to get in. "Open up!" A voice screamed from outside. "Please, we are dying out here." Yuna moved toward the door, but Brel grabbed her arm with 2 of his hands. "If you open that door, we all die." Not just us. Any chance of finding a solution dies with us. There are people out there, Una protested. There are people everywhere in the galaxy, Brel replied sadly. 17 worlds are dying right now. 300 trillion lives. We cannot save anyone by letting infected patients into a sealed laboratory. This is ugly math, Lieutenant. But it is still math. The analysis machine beeped. Both of them turned to look at the results. Brel's eyes went wide. All 4 of his arms dropped to his sides. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then ran the analysis again. The results came back the same. This cannot be real, he whispered. What do you see? Una asked. Your blood contains antibodies, Brel said slowly, as if he could not believe his own words. Perfect antibodies, specifically designed to destroy the Crimson Blight. As if your species has been fighting this plague for generations. Una nodded. This was exactly what she had expected. Because we have. I told you. This disease exists on Earth. It has existed for as long as humans have recorded their history. We call it chickenpox or varicella. It causes fever, tiredness, and red spots on the skin. Most children get it before they turn 10 years old. Most children survive it with nothing more than itchy skin and a week in bed. Children, Brel repeated. He said the word like it was from an alien language. Which, to him, it was. Your children get this disease? Almost all of them. My mother gave me soup and made me wear mittens so I would not scratch my skin. She took pictures of me covered in red spots because she thought it was funny. I still have those pictures on my datapad. Brel sat down heavily on a nearby chair. His 4 arms hung limp. He looked like someone whose entire understanding of the universe had just collapsed. The plague that destroys civilizations, he said quietly, is a childhood illness on your planet. Yes, your children survive it. With soup and mittens. Yes, the doors shook again. More screaming from outside. But inside the sealed medical bay, there was only silence as Brel tried to process what he had just learned. How? He finally asked. How is this possible? The Crimson Blight has wiped out 14 species across galactic history. Entire genetic lines erased from existence. And humans treat it like a minor inconvenience? Una thought about how to explain. It was difficult to describe something that seemed so normal to her, like explaining why water was wet or why the sky was blue. Humans evolved on a very dangerous planet, she began. Earth is full of predators, natural disasters, extreme weather, and diseases. Many diseases. Thousands of different diseases that tried to kill us throughout our history. We did not have advanced technology. We did not have spaceships or energy shields. We only had our bodies and our stubbornness. She paused, remembering history lessons from school. The Black Death that killed millions in Europe. The smallpox that destroyed entire populations. The influenza that swept across the world again and again. So much death. So much pain. But humans kept surviving. Every generation fought new plagues. Una continued. Every generation buried their dead and then kept going. Our immune systems learned. They adapted. They got stronger. The diseases that killed us thousands of years ago are now minor illnesses that our children shake off in days. Brel looked at her with new eyes. Not like she was a curiosity anymore. Like she was something terrifying. Your species, he said slowly, is built from survivors. Every human alive today is descended from people who defeated plagues that would have destroyed other civilizations. Yes, Una said simply. That is exactly what we are. The analysis machine beeped again. New data appeared on the screen. Brel leaned forward, reading quickly. Your antibodies are not just defensive, he said, excitement creeping into his voice. They are aggressive. They actively hunt the pathogen and destroy it. This is not just immunity, Lieutenant. This is weaponized biology. Yuna smiled slightly. We had a lot of practice. Brel stood up suddenly. His forearms began moving again, pulling equipment from shelves, activating communication systems, preparing samples. If we can synthesize these antibodies, he said quickly, if we can create a vaccine based on human immunity, we might be able to save people. Not just on this station, everywhere, on every infected world. Then let us start, Yuna replied. Tell me what you need. I will give you all the blood you require. She rolled up her sleeve again, ready to bleed for the galaxy. Outside the sealed doors, the screaming had stopped. Either the infected had died, or they had moved elsewhere. Inside the medical bay, two unlikely partners began working on something that no one in the galaxy had ever thought possible. A cure. Yuna contacted Earth while Brel worked on the samples. Her message reached the Global Health Authority within minutes, despite the vast distance. This is Lieutenant Yuna Park on Station Velar, she said into the communication device. I need to speak with Dr. Sunho Beak immediately. Tell him it is about chickenpox. Tell him the galaxy is dying, and we might be the only ones who can save it. The response came faster than she expected. A familiar voice crackled through the speakers. Yuna? This is Sunho. What is happening out there? She told him everything. The Crimson Blight. The dying worlds. The matching protein structures. The antibodies in her blood. He listened without interrupting, his scientist mind processing information at incredible speed. Send me all the data, Sunho said when she finished. Everything Brel has collected. I will assemble a team here, and we will start working immediately. If this is really a variant of varicella, we already have vaccines. All 3 days passed. They were the longest 3 days of Yuna's life. The sealed medical bay became her entire world. She slept on a narrow bed in the corner when exhaustion forced her to rest. She ate emergency rations that tasted like cardboard mixed with dust. She gave blood sample after blood sample until her arms were covered in small bruises. Brel apologized each time he inserted the needle. She told him to stop apologizing and keep working. Outside the sealed doors, Station Velar was dying. The life support system still functioned, powered by automatic generators. But the people were gone. Some had escaped in evacuation pods before the station went into quarantine lockdown. Others had died in the hallways, their bodies still visible through the small window in the door. Yuna tried not to look through that window dot communication with the outside. Galaxy was limited but possible. News came in fragments, each one worse than the last. Dasa Prime had gone completely dark. No signals, no survivors, nothing. The Valori Empire had lost contact with 6 more colony worlds. The Brel Confederation was building massive quarantine walls around their remaining planets, refusing to let anyone in or out. But there was also good news. Dr. Sunho Beak and his team on Earth had confirmed Yuna's theory. The Crimson Blight was indeed a variant of the varicella virus, the same family of pathogens that caused chickenpox on Earth. The protein structures were 97% identical. The attack mechanisms were exactly the same. We have begun production of a modified vaccine, Sunho reported during one of their daily communications. Based on our existing chickenpox vaccine, adjusted for the alien variant. Initial tests show promise. The antibodies from your blood samples are responding exactly as we hoped. How long until you can distribute it? Yuna asked. We are moving faster than any previous medical effort in human history. The Global Health Authority has declared an emergency mobilization. Every pharmaceutical facility on Earth is switching to vaccine production. Every available ship is being prepared for transport. We will have the first batch ready within 48 hours. 48 hours. Yuna looked at the bodies visible through the window. She wondered how many more would die in 48 hours. How many worlds would go silent before help could arrive? "Make it faster," she said. "We are trying," Sunho replied. "I promise you, Yuna, no one on this planet is sleeping. No one is stopping. We understand what is at stake." Brel was watching the communication with wide eyes. When it ended, he turned to Yuna with an expression of pure disbelief. "Your entire planet," he said slowly. "Every medical facility. Every ship. All working on this?" "Yes. Why?" Yuna did not understand the question at first. "What do you mean, why?" "People are dying. Of course we help." Brel shook his head slowly. "Lieutenant, in the 300 years of galactic civilization, no species has ever mobilized this way for another species. When the Thashan Collective faced a famine 2 centuries ago, other species sent thoughts and prayers. When the Velori Empire suffered from a toxic cloud disaster, the galaxy watched and did nothing. This is how things work. Each species takes care of its own. Everyone else is someone else's problem." Yuna felt something cold in her stomach. Not from the temperature of the room. From the realization of what Brel was telling her. "You mean," she said carefully, "if humans were dying from this plague, and you had a cure, you would not share it with us?" Brel was quiet for a long moment. "I would want to," he finally said. "I am a doctor. Saving lives is what I do. But my government would not allow it. They would say that resources must be protected, that our own people come first, that the galaxy is too big to save everyone. That is horrible. That is normal. Or at least, it was normal. Until humans." He returned to his work, leaving Yuna to think about what he had said. She had always assumed that advanced civilizations would be more generous, more caring, more willing to help strangers. Instead, she was learning that the opposite was true. The galaxy was full of species that had survived by looking out for themselves first. Cooperation was rare. Sacrifice for strangers was almost unknown. Humans were the strange ones. Humans were the ones who saw suffering and felt compelled to stop it. Humans were the ones who built hospitals and trained doctors and created vaccines not just for their own people, but for everyone. Maybe that was why Earth had never been invited to the galactic community before. Maybe the other species had looked at humanity and seen something that frightened them. Not violence or aggression, but something worse, compassion on a terrifying scale. On the 4th day, the first human ship arrived. It was a medical transport called the Hope, carrying emergency supplies and a small team of doctors. Commander Minho Jiang led the mission. He had spent 20 years coordinating humanitarian efforts on Earth, responding to earthquakes, floods, epidemics, and every other disaster that threatened human communities. This was his first mission beyond Earth, but the principles were the same. People needed help. He would provide it. The Hope docked at Station Velar carefully, using specialized equipment to create a sealed connection. Minho and his team wore protective suits, though Yuna had explained that humans were likely immune. Better safe than dead, Minho reasoned. "Lieutenant Park?" Minho's voice came through the communication system. "We are aboard." "Where are you?" "Medical Bay, Section 7. The doors are sealed. You will need emergency override codes to open them." "On our way." 10 minutes later, the medical bay doors opened for the first time in 4 days. Minho stepped through, followed by 3 other humans and an astonishing amount of equipment. Yuna had never been so happy to see people from home. "You look terrible," Minho said with a slight smile. "When did you last eat something that was not emergency rations?" "I cannot remember," Yuna admitted. "We brought real food. But first, let us get to work." The human medical team spread through the bay like a wave. They set up new equipment, analyzed Brel's data, drew more blood samples from Yuna, and began producing small batches of the modified vaccine on portable synthesis machines. They worked with a speed and efficiency that amazed Brel. "How do you do this?" he asked Minho. "How do you move so fast?" Minho was calibrating a machine while answering. He did not slow down. "Practice. Humans have been responding to emergencies for our entire history. We are very good at it by now. When disaster strikes, we do not wait. We act. We can coordinate faster than thinking about it." "Remarkable," Brel said. "Necessary. When you grow up on a planet that is constantly trying to kill you, you learn to work fast or you die." Within hours, the first test doses of the vaccine were ready. Brel volunteered to be the first recipient. He said that he was already exposed, already dying, and if there was any chance the vaccine could save him, he wanted to take it. "Are you sure?" Yuna asked. "We have not tested this on your species. We do not know what side effects there might be." Brel made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Lieutenant, I have the plague. My brain is slowly dissolving. Whatever side effects your vaccine might have, I promise you they are better than the alternative." The needle entered his arm. The vaccine flowed into his bloodstream. Everyone waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 6. Brel ran scans on himself every 30 minutes, tracking the progress of the pathogen in his system. At first, nothing seemed to change. The virus was still there, still spreading, still destroying his neural tissue. Then, slowly, the numbers began to shift. "The viral load is decreasing," Brel announced, his voice shaking. "The pathogen is dying. Your vaccine is working." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not try to hide them. Around her, the human medical team cheered. Minho grabbed her shoulder and squeezed it firmly. "Good work, Lieutenant. You just saved a life." "One life," she said. "We need to save trillions more." "One at a time," Minho replied. "That is how you save the universe. One person at a time." More ships were coming. The Hope was just the first. Behind it, a fleet of human vessels was racing across the galaxy, carrying vaccines and medical personnel to every infected world that could still be reached. Earth had mobilized like never before in its history. Dr. Sunho Beak coordinated everything from his office in Seoul. He worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. His team grew to include thousands of doctors, researchers, technicians, and volunteers from every nation on Earth. They did not care about borders or politics or old arguments. They only cared about saving lives. On Station Velar, Yuna watched the human fleet approach on a display screen. Dozens of ships, then hundreds, all converging on the dying worlds. Each ship carried hope. Each ship carried the stubborn human refusal to let strangers die without a fight. "You really are insane," Brel said softly, standing beside her. He was recovering quickly now, his neural tissue regenerating as the vaccine destroyed the pathogen. "Maybe," Yuna admitted. "When this is over, the galaxy will never look at your species the same way again." "Good. Maybe they will learn something from us? Like what?" Yuna thought about her ancestors who had survived plague after plague. She thought about her mother making soup and telling her not to scratch. She thought about Sunho and Minho and all the thousands of humans who were working without sleep to save strangers they would never meet. "Compassion," she said finally. "Maybe they will lead." Commander Minho Jiang had seen many terrible things in his career. He had walked through earthquake ruins where families were still buried under stone. He had worked in flood zones where bodies floated past him while he searched for survivors. He had fought diseases that turned healthy people into corpses within days. Nothing had prepared him for Thassa Prime. The human fleet arrived 3 weeks after the first vaccine was created. They landed in what had once been the capital city, a beautiful place of crystal towers and singing fountains. Now it was silent. The towers were dark. The fountains had run dry. Millions of bodies lay in the streets and buildings, and vehicles frozen in the middle of their final journeys. "Spread out," Minho ordered his team. "Find the survivors. There have to be survivors." They searched for hours. The city seemed empty, a monument to death on a scale that made human plagues look small. Minho began to wonder if they had arrived too late, if all their rushing and working and hoping had been for nothing. Then one of his medics called through the radio. "Commander, I found them. Underground, in some kind of bunker. There are people alive down here." Minho ran. His protective suit slowed him down, but he ran anyway, his boots pounding against the silent streets. He followed the signal to a collapsed building where a hidden entrance led down into the earth. The bunker was massive. It had been built centuries ago, designed to protect the Thashan population during wars that had never come. Now it served a different purpose. Inside its sealed chambers, millions of Thashans huddled together in the darkness. Some were infected. Many were dying. But many more were still healthy, protected by the bunker's air filtration systems and the quick thinking of a local governor who had ordered everyone underground. At the first sign of the plague, that governor was named Orville. She was ancient by Thashan standards, nearly 200 years old, with skin like cracked leather and eyes that had seen too much death. When Minho approached her, she looked at him without fear or hope. She had passed beyond both emotions weeks ago. "Who are you?" Orville asked. Her voice was weak but steady. "Commander Minho Jiang of the Earth Humanitarian Fleet," he replied, removing his helmet so she could see his face. "We have brought medicine. We have brought food. We have brought hope." Orville stared at him for a long moment. Then her ancient face crumbled, and she began to weep. "We thought we were abandoned," she said through her tears. "The galaxy forgot us. No one came. We waited and waited and no one came. We thought we would die alone in the dark." Minho knelt beside her and took her frail hands in his own. "You are not alone. Not anymore. Humans do not abandon people in need. We never have. We never will. Why? We have never done anything for your species. We have never even met a human before. Why would you come so far to save strangers?" Minho thought about how to answer. He thought about his grandmother, who had survived the Great Korean War and taught him that all suffering matters, not just your own. He thought about his father, who had spent his life building hospitals in poor communities because he believed that health was a right, not a privilege. He thought about every human who had ever reached out a hand to help someone who did not deserve it, did not earn it, could never repay it. "Because that is who we are," Minho said simply. "We are humans. We help people. It is what we do." The vaccination campaign began immediately. Human medics spread through the bunker, treating the infected and immunizing the healthy. They worked in shifts, sleeping in 4-hour rotations, pushing their bodies beyond exhaustion because every hour mattered. Back on Station Velar, Yuna coordinated communications between the scattered human ships. Reports came in from 17 different worlds, each one telling a similar story. Humans arriving at the last moment. Survivors emerging from hiding. Vaccines saving lives that everyone had assumed were already lost. Dr. Sang-Ho Beek remained on Earth, managing the endless production of vaccines. His team had grown to include scientists from every nation, working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just months before. Old rivalries were forgotten. Old borders were ignored. The only thing that mattered was making enough medicine to save the galaxy. A young medic named Hana Cho became the face of the effort on the front lines. She was only 24 years old, fresh out of medical school, when she volunteered for the relief fleet. Now she was running a field hospital on Valori 7, one of the most heavily infected worlds in the sector. Hana had not slept in 4 days. Her eyes were red, and her hands shook from caffeine and exhaustion. But she kept working because every patient she saved was a life that mattered. Every injection was a victory against death. Dr. Cho, one of her assistants, called. The vaccine production unit is running low on base components. We need to request more supplies from Earth. I will handle it, Hana said. Keep treating patients. Do not stop for anything. She stumbled to the communication station and sent a request to the supply fleet. Then she sat down for just a moment, just to rest her eyes. She was asleep in seconds, slumped against the wall in an uncomfortable position. One of the Valori patients watched her sleep. He had been brought in yesterday. Barely alive, his neural tissue almost completely destroyed. The vaccine had saved him, but recovery would take weeks. During that time, he had observed the human doctors with growing wonder. They never stopped. They never complained. They treated every patient with the same care, whether Valori or Thashin or Brel or any of the dozen other species that had sought help. They smiled even when they were exhausted. They held hands even when their patients could not feel the touch. What are these creatures? The Valori patient whispered to a nurse walking by. Humans, the nurse replied. She was Thashin, one of the survivors from the bunker on her home world. They came from a small planet at the edge of the galaxy. They came to save us. Why? The nurse smiled sadly. I asked the same question. Their commander told me it was because that is who they are. I did not understand at first. I thought he was being diplomatic, hiding some secret motive. But then I watched them work. They really mean it. They really came here just to help strangers. I have lived for 300 years, the Valori patient said. I have never seen anything like this. Neither had I, neither had anyone. The galaxy has never encountered a species like them before. On Brel Prime, the Confederation's sealed borders were open for the first time in weeks. Human ships were allowed through the quarantine walls, carrying vaccines that the Brel scientists had analyzed and deemed safe. The Confederation's leaders were suspicious at first. Why would aliens offer help without demanding something in return? What do you want from us? The Brel Chancellor demanded during a communication with Commander Jang. Minho was too tired for diplomatic games. I want you to stop dying. That is all. We do not want territory. We do not want resources. We do not want political favors. We just want your people to live. I do not believe you. You do not have to believe me. Just let us help. Watch what we do. If you still do not trust us afterward, you can throw us out. But right now, your people are dying and we can save them. Let us save them. The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly he nodded. Very well. You may enter our space. But we will be watching you, human. Watch all you want, Minho replied. We have nothing to hide. The human ships entered Brel space and began their work. Within days, the infection rates began to fall. Within weeks, the plague was in retreat. The Brel scientists analyzed every step of the treatment, searching for hidden traps or secret poisons. They found nothing. The humans were exactly what they appeared to be. Strangers who had come to help Dot. It was a concept so foreign that the Brel could barely process it. On Station Vila, Brel the doctor had made a full recovery. His neural tissue had regenerated completely, saved by the vaccine that Yuna's blood had made possible. He spent his days helping the human medical teams, learning their techniques, adapting their methods for alien biology. I have been thinking, he told Yuna one evening. They were sitting in the station's observation deck, watching human ships arrive and depart through the docking ports below. About what? Yuna asked. About why your species is like this. I have studied your history now. your wars, your diseases, your disasters. You have suffered as much as any species in the galaxy, more than most. By every logical measure, you should have become hard and cold. You should have learned to protect only yourselves. Instead, you became kinder, more generous, more willing to sacrifice for strangers. It makes no sense. Yuna smiled softly. Maybe it makes perfect sense. Maybe suffering taught us that no one should have to suffer alone. Maybe we learned compassion because we knew what it felt like to need it. That is beautiful, Brel admitted. And terrifying. Why terrifying? Because a species that refuses to let strangers die, that mobilizes its entire planet to save aliens it has never met. That treats the apocalypse like a problem to be solved rather than a fate to be accepted. Such a species has no limits. Such a species will never stop. Such a species might one day remake the entire galaxy in its own image. Yuna thought about that for a while. She watched the human ships moving through space, carrying hope to dying worlds. She thought about her ancestors who had survived plague after plague, passing down not just immunity, but also values. The belief that helping others was worth any cost. The stubborn refusal to year had passed since the Crimson Blight first appeared in the sector. 1 year of fear, death, and desperate survival. 1 year of watching worlds go dark and civilizations crumble. And now, finally, 1 year of recovery. The Great Hall of Valor had been rebuilt from the ruins. Where once there had been broken walls and collapsed ceilings, now there stood elegant pillars of crystal and metal. The Valori architects had worked for months, racing to finish the hall in time for this day. The day when the galaxy would come together to honor those who had saved it. Representatives from every surviving world filled the hall. Valori diplomats in flowing silver robes. Thashan scientists with their large, curious eyes. Brel warriors in ceremonial armor that had never seen battle. A dozen other species, some who had never before sent ambassadors to galactic events, now stood side by side in the beautiful space dot at the center of the hall. A platform had been constructed. On it stood the heroes of the plague year, the humans who had come from nowhere and saved everyone. Lieutenant Yuna Park was there, wearing her formal military uniform for the first time in months. She felt uncomfortable in it after so long in practical work clothes. But Minho had insisted that they should look their best for this ceremony. Commander Minho Jiang stood beside her, his chest covered with medals that he did not care about. He would rather be back on Thassa Prime, helping with the reconstruction efforts. But someone had to represent the humanitarian fleet, and his team had elected him without giving him a choice. Dr. Sung-Ho Beek had traveled from Earth for this event. It was his first time leaving the planet, and he found the experience overwhelming. So many aliens, so many strange faces, but also so many grateful smiles, so many whispered thanks from people he had never met. Hana Cho stood at the end of the line, looking embarrassed by all the attention. She was still just a young doctor who had done her job. She did not understand why everyone kept calling her a hero. Ambassador Rolta approached the podium. His silver skin had recovered its healthy shine, and his hands no longer trembled. The plague had taken much from him, including his wife and 2 of his children. But he had survived, and he intended to use that survival for something meaningful. "Thank you all for coming," Rolta began, his voice strong and clear. "We gathered today not to celebrate victory, but to honor sacrifice. Not to praise ourselves, but to thank others." The hall fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every attention focused on the ambassador. 1 year ago, we faced extinction. The Crimson Blight swept through our worlds like fire through dry grass. We watched our families die. We watched our civilizations collapse. We sent desperate messages into the void, begging for help, knowing that no help would come. Because in the history of this galaxy, help never came. Each species survived alone or died alone. That was the only way we knew. Rolta paused, looking at the human delegation on the platform. Then they came. Strangers from a small planet at the edge of the galaxy. A species we had never met. A people we had never helped. They had no reason to care about us. They had no obligation to risk their lives for ours. They could have stayed home, protected their own world, and watched the rest of us die from a safe distance. He shook his head slowly. Instead, they sent everything they had. Every ship, every doctor, every vaccine. They mobilized their entire planet to save strangers. Not for money, not for power, not for political advantage. They did it because they believed that all life has value. They did it because they could not watch others suffer without trying to help. The audience stirred. Some wept quietly. Others simply stared at the humans with expressions of wonder and confusion. We thought ourselves advanced, Rolta continued. We mastered faster than light travel. We built stations among the stars. We created technologies that would have seemed like magic to our ancestors. But we never learned the most important lesson of all. We never learned that strength without compassion is hollow. We never learned that civilization means taking care of each other, not just building impressive things. He turned to face the human delegation directly. The humans taught us this lesson, not with words or lectures, but with action. They came when no one else would come. They stayed when anyone else would have left. They treated our wounded, mourned our dead, and rebuilt our cities. They asked for nothing in return. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not expected such a speech. She had not expected anyone to notice what they had done. She had just done her job, the same job her ancestors had done for thousands of years. Fight the plague. Save the patients. Keep going no matter what. The plague that nearly destroyed us, Rolta said, was a childhood illness on their world. Their children get it. They recover with soup and rest. They move on with their lives. When we told them our apocalypse was their minor inconvenience, they did not laugh at us. They did not feel superior. They immediately began working on a cure. Because that is who they are. He paused for a long moment. I asked Lieutenant Park once why humans came to help us. She told me something I will never forget. She said that humans survived their dangerous planet by learning that no one should suffer alone. She said that compassion was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. She said that helping strangers was simply what humans do. Rolta smiled slightly, the first smile he had managed since losing his family. I have thought about those words every day for the past year. I have watched the humans work. I have seen their exhaustion, their tears, their moments of despair when patients died despite their best efforts. And through it all, I have never seen them give up. Never seen them walk away. Never seen them decide that someone was not worth saving. He spread his arms wide, addressing the entire hall. We must learn from them. We must become more like them. Not because we owe them a debt, though we do. Not because they expect it, because they clearly do not. We must become more like them because they have shown us a better way to exist. A way where species help each other instead of watching each other die. A way where compassion is valued more than power. A way where strangers are treated as friends waiting to be discovered. The audience began to applaud. It started slowly, just a few clapping hands and clicking claws and stomping feet. Then it spread, growing louder and louder until the entire hall shook with the sound. Rolta waited for the applause to fade, then turned to face the human delegation one final time. Lieutenant Park, Commander Jang, Dr. Beak, Dr. Cho, and all the humans across the galaxy who are still working to heal our worlds. We thank you. Not with words alone, but with a promise. The galactic community will never forget what you have done. And more importantly, We will never again watch others suffer without trying to help. You have changed us forever." He bowed deeply, a gesture of respect that Valoria only gave to those they considered family. "Welcome to the galaxy, humans. You have earned your place among us, and we are honored to call you our friends." The applause erupted again, even louder than before. Aliens who had never spoken to each other before found themselves embracing. Species that had been enemies for centuries reached out across old divisions. Something had changed in the galaxy, something fundamental and permanent. On the platform, Yuna wiped her eyes and tried to smile. Minho put a hand on her shoulder. Sunho looked overwhelmed by the attention. Hana still seemed embarrassed, shuffling her feet and looking at the ground. "We should say something," Minho whispered. "You say something," Yuna whispered back. "You are the commander." Minho stepped forward slowly. The hall fell silent again, waiting. "Thank you for your kind words, Ambassador Rolta," Minho said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "But I want to be clear about something. We did not come here to be heroes. We came here to do what any decent species would do when others are in danger. We helped because you needed help. That is all. That is everything." "That is everything." He looked out at the gathered aliens, their strange faces and unfamiliar bodies, their different languages and customs and beliefs. And he saw something he recognized. He saw people. Just people trying to survive, trying to find meaning, trying to build something lasting in a universe that seemed determined to tear everything down. "On Earth, we have a saying," Minho continued. "We say that you can judge a person not by how they treat their friends, but by how they treat strangers. I believe the same is true for civilizations. We humans chose long ago to treat strangers with kindness, not because we expected anything in return, but because we believed that was the right way to live." He smiled slightly. "We hope you will join us in that belief. We hope you will build a galaxy where species help each other, where no one suffers alone, where compassion is seen as strength rather than weakness. We cannot build such a galaxy by ourselves. We need your help. We need all of you to decide that the old way was wrong and that a new way is possible." He stepped back, gesturing to his fellow humans. "We are just ordinary people. We are not special. We are not magical. We are just stubborn. We refuse to give up. We refuse to accept that some problems are too big to solve. We refuse to let strangers die when we have the power to save them. That is all. That is the great human secret. We are too stubborn to stop trying." He looked at Yuna, and his smile widened. "Lieutenant Park saved the galaxy because she Remem.